backend developers are not much about development. It's about Kubernetes and terraforming and all of these deployment things that I still don't understand, to be honest. I would say learn the concepts, not the libraries. Developers often focus on, hey, there's this one library. Then you put them in a slightly different environment and they're completely lost.
You've worked for both major customer-facing apps like eBay and Groupon, and in the media streaming space with Viacom and SoundCloud. So broadly speaking, what are these industries like?
Stop automating. If you're running against the wall again and again and again, you can't make this working. Maybe it's not worth automating. Step back. I mean, we all hate ads as a user. We all hate them as a developer, I can tell you.
No one's enjoying that journey there. Hello, and welcome to Tech Effect, the podcast where we interview industry leaders and experts to get their insights on the trends and topics shaping the tech industry. My name is Josh from TestDevLab's marketing team, and today I'm joined by Danny Preussler. Danny has over 20 years' experience in software development and is currently a full-stack engineer at SoundCloud, which many people may know is an online audio and music streaming platform that allows users to upload, share, and listen to music, podcasts, and DJ sets. Danny's current work has him focused on integrations, but his journey in software has taken him down many routes, from developing on Android, working for platforms like eBay, testing, and beyond. So it's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. Now, Danny, as I alluded to in your introduction, your 20 years in tech has taken you on a journey from being a specialized Android engineer at major companies like eBay, Groupon, and Viacom to now a full-stack engineer at SoundCloud. So our audience can learn a little bit more about you and your perspective on this journey. I'd like to kick off our conversation by asking you, what made you want to get started in tech?
That's a good question. And I think I should update my LinkedIn. I think it's 25 years I'm already in this, let's call it mess of the industry. My start was a bit random, I would say. So I had like a computer, but I used it for gaming, like all of this back then. I was good in math back in school, but I never thought about even going to computer science. And then towards the end of school, there was an astronomy course because I was a sci-fi nerd. So I was there, and then the teacher said, you're like 4 people in this class. We have to shut it down and find something else. And I said, okay, let's try the computer thing. And I was good. And then I said, okay, let's maybe keep going that.
It just led on.
It was a tough kickstart in the beginning because you had to catch up with all these people that felt like programming their whole life. But
you got there.
I liked it, and I still like it.
And you still like it, and you're here to this day. And why Android specifically? Was that from the school? Was that what you were working with, or?
No, I finished school in 1998. That was very far from Android being up here. So in the beginning, I did like very embedded stuff. So maybe this is like where it started. Like, I don't know, it was like embedded Java and printers. And then these feature phone appeared of like the Siemens and the Nokias. And there was a little bit of Java. And then they gave, hey, Danny, you're the Java guy. Can you program this BlackBerry? And then they did for a long time. We did like BlackBerry apps, like this way this. Phones with the keyboard, And then Android appeared. In the beginning, as a side thing. And at some point, you realized, BlackBerry's dying. This Android thing seems to work. Maybe I should switch. And then for a long time, nothing but Android.
No, I remember BlackBerry. That was a while ago. So obviously, you went from BlackBerry and you went on Android. But now you're a full-stack engineer. So what made you take that another leap from just Android development all the way up to full-stack?
Mm-hmm. I think there were 2 things at stake here. So one, that I had like over the last 20 years always, I call like the pendulum. So there's always, you start as an engineer on IC, maybe the first one in the team, you grow the team, at some point they make you the tech lead, then you make you a manager, and at some point you realize I'm very far from what I love, and then you switch company or switch internally to be more like a developer again. And this is like the pendulum. So I think it was just the pendulum was at the end again. So they made me manager, and I realized at some point, what I really enjoy is coding. I hate my job. I should do something. And then, okay, what should I do now? I didn't want to leave the company because I liked SoundCloud. And there was opportunity in this integrations team, or we call it the everything else team. And I always loved this. I loved working with, TVs and stuff. So see like Android more out of the phone. So I thought, hey, this might be the thing. And let's try to learn something new.
So there's a little bit of inspiration, and you're just like, you know what? I want to do something new. I'm getting kind of stuck in this Android. I want to move beyond that. And then there was the opportunity at SoundCloud. You enjoyed the company. And from there, you just ended up doing full stack, which is a lot more than just Android development. It's a much larger scope. So You got to play around.
I think it was the first thing my boss said. But there won't be much Android there. I was aware. Like I have to do that's like back end and front end and a little bit of Android.
A little bit of Android. And what were some of the big technical difficulties or something challenges you maybe encountered when you made that transition? Because if you've been working in Android and specializing for so long, and now you're going to a much broader part of development, what was some of the challenges there? Was it like learning new languages? Was it having to use new tools, new UIs, new SDKs? I
think the language is actually not a challenge. It was also like a learning. I kind of knew it moving from Java to Kotlin when Android went that route. Languages can easily adapt. Like after a while, if you've seen like one language, you've seen in all. Like a bit like exaggerating here. Challenges was, for example, in the backend. I realized that backend developers are not much about development. It's about Kubernetes and terraforming and all of these deployment things that I still don't understand, to be honest. But definitely, less development than I thought. Front end, you kind of always make these jokes about like all these thousands of frameworks they're having and always reinventing everything. And it's like that. It's a big mess. Every project feels different. So I feel like I'm still in the beginning there. So this is what I think two of the main challenges.
So I guess it comes from being very specialized to, as you said, full stack is very broad. And then you're like, oh, wow, there's less developed, more terraforming and then everything else. But was there one big surprise that you had going into full stack?
I think there's a small surprise that like caught me definitely like at some point when I started looking at the front end project, I asked like the front end developer, how do you debug here? And then he looked at me and said, you put the word debugger in the code. I said, what? That's actually how you're able to debug in JavaScript. I never would have thought that way. So another surprise I didn't expect, like as an Android developer, you use Android Studio. We're using this for a very long time, maybe using IntelliJ, but you're using this one tool. Nowadays, I hope like there's tons of services, and sometimes there's something wrong and you can't get it running. And then I asked like another backend developer, hey, I can't get everything is red in my project. He said, don't worry, just use the command line. Then you're using the IDE more as an editor. And I was like, wow, no one would ever do that in Android. That was like interesting. So be a bit more pragmatic. If you don't get it running, just call make on the command line and just edit there.
It'll work. Nice. And now that you are fully in full stack, it's not a recent thing for you. It is what you do. It's the world you work in. But you do have that Android experience. As you said, you were very specialized in it. So with that unique perspective of people maybe who were still very deeply invested in Android might not see, from this vantage point, do you think there's any big changes in the Android ecosystem? Because we're now on Android 16, and that means you have to keep adapting, keep playing with the tools. But from the overall system and from your unique viewpoint, have you noticed any big changes or anything you'd like to highlight for the audience about sort of the Android ecosystem and how it's developed?
I think in general, Android became very mature as a platform. I remember like the early days, like every Google I/O, we had to learn a complete new way of like writing apps. Nowadays, it's very stable. I mean, the biggest changes were when they introduced coroutines or Jetpack Compose. But that's how it is. That's how what Google called modern Android development. They have patterns they follow. There are not so many new things anymore, I would say. So yeah, it was the right moment, I think, also to step a bit out, to not completely, when come back in a year, maybe that everything will be different. I don't expect that.
Okay, that's good. So for those developers who are in the Android world, are there any specific practices that you, from working in Android and then in full stack, found really useful for that jump?
So one tip. So I gave a talk about this journey just a few weeks ago, and I think one tip I gave them that you will find a lot of similarities when you come from Android to like everything else world. So if you know Android and use coroutines, which is the way we do like asynchronous code, and then you go to Go, you realize they have Go routines. It's like they're a bit different than just the one letter, but they're a similar concept. We do Jetpack Compose for UI, and it's very heavily inspired by Flutter and React. So actually, you see the same concept actually everywhere. Like the language of like Swift and Kotlin are much closer to each other than it used to be Objective-C and Java. So the platforms also became closer, and you find a lot of similarities. So I would say, be up to date, learn modern Android development, learn the concepts, and you will find similar ones. The only thing is, I would say, learn the concepts, not the libraries. I see this in general, like the developers often focus on, hey, there's this one library, they need to in and out. Then you put them in a slightly different environment and they're completely lost because maybe that library is not available there. So understand the concepts, I think. But a lot of the knowledge is actually applicable. It was like very good for me to know.
So having those big foundational sort of knowledges from Android, you don't have to focus on the very niche specifics, but if you have a good foundational thing and you understand when you get out of the Android and you want to maybe go full stack, those core things will follow you and you'll see that, oh, actually I can apply these principles to a lot more than just Android. It's not the same specific library, but I've seen this in Android. Oh, okay, that's how it works here as well. Oh, I get it now, sort of thing.
Exactly.
So that's really useful and good insight from someone who's done it all. And for developers specializing in mobile, because you've done a lot of work with mobile and are considering expanding their skill set, is it a similar story or is there anything difficult? Because full stack isn't just mobile, but expanding beyond mobile, what skills should people use? Is it the same as Android? Once you have the fundamentals, you just see it happen, or is there anything extra you have to pick up when you go to full stack from just mobile?
Yeah, so right now I don't do any mobile. So it's definitely like full stack. So it's backend and front end, no Android. But yeah, as I said, I think learn the concepts, understand how things work under the hood. I don't know. Maybe learn how to write your own dependency injection framework, and then you will understand when you come to a platform where there is no such framework like Mockito. You can write your own because you understand the concepts, or you will find a similar thing there. So that's what I think. Otherwise, be curious. There's a lot of things that you also said, oh, I wish we had that on Android. You will find. Also, one thing I noticed also that in the Android bubble, sometimes we focus a lot on ourselves and we are overcomplicating sometimes things, and there needs to be this one way and this one specific thing. And then you come to a platform like Go, like language that is very, very simple on purpose. And they said, oh yeah, if you need a mock, you go to the command line and generate it by code. And not like, oh, I need this code generation runtime tool. It's like, no, that's fine. Maybe think a bit more simple. I think that's what I would take back on the GoMedics Android project. Sometimes maybe we overcomplicate things. So
it's a bit like, I guess, pulling from your journey of you got really deep into Android development, you wanted to go full stack, and it's during then transition you thought, oh, well, as long as you have those core fundamentals and you're always, teaching yourself a bit more, being curious, getting out there, the transition isn't super scary either from mobile or from Android to full stack. As long as you have your core fundamentals and you can understand the concepts and how things work, you won't need those specific libraries or those very niche things, but your strong foundation allows you to make that change. And that's what I guess helps you make your change, because once you know what you're doing, you like, oh, okay.
The only thing I would add is you have to be aware that you're moving from a formerly very senior engineer on Android to a junior backend developer or front-end developer. It will take, you understand the concepts, you are not completely like a beginner, but you will make a lot of mistakes. You have to listen to the backend developer. So this mental shift, I think you have to be aware that...
open to learning.
Open to learn. And also appreciate a company that, for example, gives you this chance, because you are still on a salary of a senior developer and they put you for a while in a junior position.
But they know that value will come there, because if they've seen you do, I guess, well in Android, know what you're doing, they know you can catch up again in full stack and get those extra concepts, because you have that foundation. They know you know what you're doing. You just have to pick up a couple extra specific skills, like the specific library in Android. You might have to learn something specific for full stack and listen to your backend developers and listen to your team. So be open and don't, I guess, a bit of advice there could be, don't assume just because you were really, really good at Android means you're going to be really, really good at full stack. You have to be ready to humble yourself a bit and be like, okay, there are some new things I need to learn here.
100%, yeah.
100%. And I guess then moving on to AI, which is a big topic in tech recently. It's a bit of a buzzword. Lots of companies are investing a lot, trying to integrate AI into their products. It is a word of the year. Now you are a full stack developer. Looking at the growing role of AI in development, what advice would you give developers looking to adapt and not get left behind, as AI it's there? It's not like a brand new entering thing. Companies are investing, they are trying to integrate. What advice would you give to a developer from a full stack perspective?
I think you already said the most important one. Don't be left behind. Don't stay behind. So don't oppose this. I wasn't one that like early on jumped right in it, but now I'm using it like every day. And I'm not talking about code completion. I use my AI assistant on the side. I use like agents. For me, for my transition, actually, it helped a lot. So I'm opening microservices I've never seen. I know there's some endpoint with this pattern somewhere. And then I asked the agent, can you try to find me all the points in the code where this is called? This is very helpful. So it's a bit this junior developer you have on the side that you can give tasks and then it will point you. So from how I use it, I would call myself, I'm still the Android do it for a lot of people. It will for a long time. So I would think I moved into what's called a T-shaped engineer. So you have specialized in one thing, and then you have a bit of everything else on top. And AI actually makes the T part actually much wider because all of a sudden you can dig into a language in a project you've never seen before, which I think would be much harder before. So actually will help you if you're curious. And in your daily job, I mean, some people are, afraid this will be still my job or something. Use it as a tool. Know its weaknesses, but also know its strength. I was at a music and tech conference lately, and there was similar questions, like for artists, like, AI is going to be replaced, but they have the same fear. And they said, no, I'm just using it for the boring things. If I don't like mastering, I let AI do the mastering. If you don't like one thing in your daily job, give it to the AI agent and keep focusing on things that you like. And in the end, it will make you more productive.
I think I had one QA lead come on the podcast, and he mentioned that AI agents are really good at helping you automate your tasks because they are a tool at the end of the day. So you can focus on the more human aspect of your work. There are certain things that humans do well, and humans can do better than AI and will always do better than AI. But AIs are really useful to, as you mentioned, take those tasks you don't want to do, you don't have time to do, you just give it to the AI and you can focus on what you are good at and what you are able to add in that human aspect there.
Yeah, for sure. Like when code completion appeared, I started development, there was no code completion in that case, and then no one was opposing this, but now people are a bit like opposing AI, like just as a tool. It will make you more productive if you use it the right way.
Use it the right way. And then I guess any specific advice for QA testers or software testers who are using AI? There's a big movement to shift left and AI is getting integrated with the testing into the software development lifecycle. Is there any specific advice for them?
I'm actually very curious what role AI will play there, because I think the first thing developers will think of, finally AI can write these tests for me, because I always hate writing tests. And then someone like me will say, oh my God, it's like the worst idea ever. Or using AI to do your testing also sounds wrong because it's non-deterministic, right? We're talking about LLMs. So this will make it even more flaky. That's the first thought I had in mind. But actually then also by talking to people and looking further, there's a lot of things you can do. You can leverage it. For example, let AI generate the test code, and then you have the test code, and then you have something that is stable. Or when you have a lot of test data, there was a talk by someone on the Go community. They run load tests like every week and like a big platform. And it took a long time for them building all these dashboards to analyze this data. The AI will help you analyze this data. So you have to guide it. You have to make sure that your output is right and all of this. But use it again here as a tool. And to be honest, we always joked about like manual testing, everything's automated. I think with AI, developers will write a lot of code. The code quality, this is all the studies show so far, will go down. The duplication will go up. You really need a lot of QA to test all these software that was written by AI. So I think it's a good way, maybe in time, to start looking into QA. And then use AI again to test the code that AI has written.
I think you mentioned the AI is being used to help make code. There will be duplicates. But you do still need that, I guess, human element in there, because if you write a code with AI and have AI test the code and there's no human oversight just to double check those finer edge cases, those extra duplications, that it won't end well necessarily, because the AI that tests the AI code will be like, yep, this is fine, but you need a little extra bit of that human expertise in there, the experienced tester to be like, this is a tool, we can't just let it do its own thing in the corner.
It's the same as with developers. Like AI we will write less code than we do now as a developer. You have to accept that. But there will be a lot of code that we might not understand anymore. There's a problem. So the fact of like reviewing code or guiding the agents to write the right code will be a very important task. And we have a lot of I mean, the good thing is AI enables people to write applications that don't have a computer science background. But they have no idea what is this code that's generated there. So they're missing out the expertise. So they need like developers like us, like QA people, to help them building the right thing in the end, or not creating the software apocalypse.
Just a big mess out there. Exactly. You need someone to guide it a bit. I should mention to our audience, you are no stranger to the world of software testing, as you've already shown us today, and you have given talks about it at DroidCon in London. So Danny, to help us build a picture of what it's like testing in industries, we should first establish, I guess, what it's like to work in those industries and the different requirements and complexities and mentalities in those. As I already mentioned, you've worked for both major customer-facing apps like eBay and Groupon, and in the media streaming space with Viacom and SoundCloud. So broadly speaking, what are these industries like? We could start maybe with the eBay Groupon. What's it like working? What's the mentality? What are people focusing on in those industries? And then I guess we'll compare it to what it's like in the streaming, because maybe they have similarities that go across them both, or maybe they're really different. And in the sort of eBay Groupon space, it's all about the customer and the personalization of apps. Whereas in streaming, it's also, you have to consider other parties, or there's different things that you have to look out for. So what are those both sort of like?
So actually, when I think about when I was at Groupon, I was actually on not on the consumer facing, but on the merchant facing side. So it's kind of the B2B part. While at eBay, I was the consumer facing, which is the first thing that I learned for myself, that I prefer the consumer facing, because the way also as a developer you have to think of the app is very different when you do like a B2B app. It's not so much about this fancy animation, but the thing needs to be rock solid. If customer stands in front of you, you cannot have this, oh, please retry, something went wrong in this transaction or something, right? So different things play at stake there. But I also enjoyed just consumer facing. I think the same that brought me into mobile in the first place. I can take this app and show to my mom, this is look what I'm doing for my job, right? So this is why I prefer, I think, the consumer facing part. And then we have the streaming. So I was like in video streaming and in audio streaming. And I would say as a developer, a big difference there is you have to watch a lot of streams. You have to listen to a lot of music, because if you test your app, you have to use this. It's very different from I'm scrolling this list. It doesn't matter if it's like emails or products. You have to enjoy watching stupid TV shows if you're like, I don't know, in a certain media company, or you have to listen to music because you will have to listen to a lot of music. Otherwise, if you don't enjoy this, maybe don't go there.
Do you like listening to music?
Oh, I like music. I can't make music. I'm really terrible. It's the same as like I'm not a designer, but I love pointing out a bad design. I listen to music like all day, literally.
Yeah. So you have that there, and that, I guess that's part of the job, and you have to enjoy it. So I guess big takeaway there is, I guess, and from a marketing perspective, I see it too. I can be like, look, I did that to my mum. I made that ad. And streaming is a lot more maybe intensive than people think, because they do have to have someone sit there and review every second of a video stream.
Plus also from development and from the usage patterns, but different. When you think about streaming, there was Chromecast, there was the TV platforms. The consumption is very different. Even as an Android developer, you have a bigger, broader way of like devices you need to target. The video streaming, you will look into tablet, while most developers don't care about tablets. So also like it's a bit different way, and that's why I also do integration. So I love having 5,000 devices on my desk and
getting the latest technology. New device to play with.
Exactly.
So I guess that goes into when you are testing and you have your millions of devices on your desk, and the new phone and the old phone and the really old phone for some other markets. How do you prioritize defects when you're doing the testing in those industries? Maybe in the sort of customer facing side, there's a different sort of defect you have to watch out for in the lists. Maybe it's specific UI stuff. And how do you prioritize defects on the streaming side of things?
I think they're very similar in the end. You set up some, if you call them KPIs or something, right? Like some numbers that are important for you. In a streaming, it might be, I don't know, time to play, the moment you click on a play button until the first second of playback happens or something like this, or the first frame of the video may be the most important thing. Might be the listening time is very important for us, like how many hours a user is listening to. You have other KPIs when it comes to, I don't know, and like you build like an Amazon clone or something, then users need to buy, so make sure that they don't drop up in the checkout. But you have these numbers, and in the end, you look at these numbers, you build your dashboards, you try to see pattern, because what I always enjoy is working with these big companies. We not like have 500 clients out there, you have millions of, and in the end, you see like these patterns, you see drops, and then you have to react. You have to figure out, okay, maybe on this specific device, on this Android OS, something seems to be off. So I like always this looking from the big and then trying to figure out what is the pattern here. By the way, AI might help us in the future analyzing these, seeing these patterns. I think that's an important one. And what's the same on both is also, I think our old CPO said, our previous CPO, an app that is crashing or is very laggy is a bad app. It's a bad product. So it can be very shiny, but if it then takes 20 seconds to load, the user probably already is on TikTok and forgot that you opened your app. So they're gone.
They're gone. So I guess
it's the same quality. It's like crash rate and these things we look at, plus the specific one that's important for your business, I would say.
Yeah. So some fundamentals are the same. It's all about like checking and making sure the product works, that you're not launching a bad app. But it's just the KPIs are a bit different. If you're a buyer or a streamer, like minutes listened or purchases made, it's the KPIs are a bit different, but the fundamentals are you're looking for patterns and you're making sure what you are delivering is good. And part of that involves a lot of testing that can take up time. How do you choose what to automate in those industries when you're doing your testing?
And that's a good one. So at SoundCloud, for example, we don't have this traditional QA roles. We don't have a QA department especially. We have a few QAs, but also I think it took us 10 years or 13 years before we even hired the first QA. And they are still embedded in the team. They are part of the team. They're developers. Because one thing that I saw a lot, that you have this tendency, if you have test automation engineers, they will automate. They will automate if you need it or not. If someone looks at this test or not, they will automate. I think if the team is responsible for the quality of they deliver themselves, they will automate what's important. They will make sure that there's automation in place, that you don't break the most important things, like the app doesn't even start. You should realize this very quickly. And that's, I think, so think about the things that are very important, that you should never break. And also, like, what's the effort? I mean, we'll talk about this a bit later when it comes to flakiness. And so at some point, it's like important to stop automating. If you're running against the wall again and again and again, you can't make this working, maybe it's not worth automating. Step back. Maybe it's fine having a semi-automatic thing, a script that you run every time you want to release. Just run the script, look at the screen, something is wrong, let me just restart it. Then trying to automate it, and then, CI server failed again after 3 hours. Let me restart the whole set in the end. It should give you value. I think this was the most, yeah.
Okay, and I guess part of that, I mean, SoundCloud, by the sounds of it, with the integrated QAs, it's very shift left. It's in the software development lifecycle. Everyone has a stake in the sort of product of everyone has a stake in the quality of the product. And that means everyone is involved. Everyone's thinking about the quality from the get-go, and you'll know what to automate when it happens. And it will, as each problem or everything gets developed or a feature gets things, you'll know if it needs an automation or not. Well, that's really useful. And in sort of going back to those customer-facing apps like eBay and Groupon, with large transactions, personalization, as we mentioned, what are some of the most important parts of testing in those specific industries? And what is the important, maybe, feedback loops in that industry? If it's very sort of, as you mentioned, there's the B2B side and there's the customer-facing side, how important are maybe customer feedback loops? And are there any parts of testing that change in that?
That's a good question. People underestimate this aspect of personalization when it comes to development, but especially when it comes to testing. I remember there was one company and they offered to build a client, and they said, yeah, we just clone your whole inventory, and then we have this pre-rendered template app. And we said, no, but the screen looks different for every single of these millions of users. And by the way, there's like hundreds of millions of entries. And then they looked at it a bit weirdly because they didn't believe that. So when you have a personalized screen, it's much harder to test it because it's actually not the tester that defines it, but a lot of things. It might be your location, the history of that user, right? What did you listen before? Which makes testing much harder because it's less deterministic in a way. So when you try to automate this, you have to mock everything out, right? So it's much harder doing this end-to-end test, I would say, to automate these end-to-end tests, because it's out of your control. Like what we're doing a lot, not only us, but when it comes to personalization, it's called server-driven UI. So actually, the client only knows that it renders in a list of 10 items. The first item is of this type, and it knows how to render this thing. I don't know, it's a hero image or a carousel, but it doesn't know what's inside. And every time it will be something different probably. The server tells you what to render. So the way of a test here, from if it's a tester or a developer, is make sure that whatever comes is rendered correctly. It's not important if this is the new track from Billie Eilish or a Metallica track. It's important that when it's a track image, it renders as a track. And then do your usual takes, right? Along an album name, special characters, test these things, and then trust that the system that the system itself works.
Gets it right.
And gets it right.
And so then working and developing those apps, as you're mentioning, you can get it right and you have to make sure the image is rendered correctly and all of that. Are there any specific sort of challenges or anything specific to developing an app for the streaming industry versus any other industry? What are some of those key metrics you look for? Obviously, you mentioned you have to check listening time, but is there anything super specific that comes with the development of that is like a key point for people who are like working in that industry or want to work in that industry?
So, as I said, when it comes to streaming, you have to listen and watch a lot of streams. And when it comes to development, it's maybe a bit different how things are approached here. And the traditional app, like Google for a long time would say it's offline first. Everything is like on some device, database or something. You open the app and everything's there. When it comes to this personalization, for example, into streaming, there's a certain amount that users expect. For example, I don't know, you pay a subscription and you have your offline items and they should be synced. But most of that stuff is actually, as we just said, the server defines what you see. You can't really do this offline first thing because you can't sync, I don't know, off SoundCloud to your app. So it's a bit different mind shift there because you have both aspects. You have the server-driven and you have the offline part. And you have to handle, the network conditions. So you have, I think with this offline first, you're trying to avoid handling the network because networks are different and flaky. In the media apps, you have to handle them. So you're starting a video or a song, and then you have like a bad network because you're on the train. You don't expect it to pause. So there's preloading involved. Maybe for video adaptive, so the quality goes down when the network starts. For example, for music, usually you don't want that. You don't want it all sounds crappy. You want the quality that you pay for, you want constantly. So it's a bit different, but still, like I think network latencies are more important than in I don't know, a mail app. If the email takes like 3 seconds to send or 1 second, it's not that important. But it's very important if it takes 3 seconds and the song starts or 1 second.
And as a side question to that, as companies scale, a lot of startups or general businesses scale up, that's a lot to manage. Is there anything developers should really like focus in on when they're scaling that is important to get right? Is it the quality? Is it that they're downloaded? Is it that doesn't matter what the latency is, it has to be this quality? If you're scaling fast, how, your audience are growing, your network conditions, there's more users on there, there's a lot more happening. What's sort of a key fundamental to get right as you scale?
So when it comes to scaling, I would say also as a full stack developer, your backend will do the scaling. And it's important because in streaming, very often you have like peak times. There's a new album from BTS out. Our access will go through the roof. You're in a sports streaming, and there's it's game day, right? Match day. There's a match starting. That's when the traffic loads. The apps don't care that much about it, I would say. They just make sure it works. Make sure maybe the one thing, especially now that I'm on the other side, tell the client developers, if it doesn't work and you have some retry pattern, make sure not actually taking down your own backend when it comes back on. So that's definitely something that I've seen before. Everything is down. All the clients keep retrying. You're trying to bring the backend back up, and it's bombarded with requests because all the clients of the world trying at the same time the same thing. So think about like back off techniques and things like this there. And most of the time the scaling, I think it's fine. Just make sure your app works proper. It can handle certain things.
Yeah. Make sure the app works and can handle when there is like a BTS drop. You have to be ready for that, because if you go down at that core moment, then people are going to be mad. Exactly. And you're going to get complaints. And why isn't this working? Exactly.
It's like in the end, like, I don't know, if you're in Amazon and there's Black Friday, if that's the moment you're waiting the whole year and then everything goes down, I think you didn't prepare well.
Yeah, you didn't prepare well enough. And sort of just before we move on to the big thing, because we'll start talking about misconceptions, either from the streaming world or the eBay, Groupon world, do you think there's any big misconceptions you've seen people have? Because you talk to developers, you see that, and maybe when you're talking about specific products, they're like, oh, it's just that. Is there any big misconceptions you see people have about the development of either of those products? Maybe some people think it's easy.
So one thing I remember saying, I remember there was a meeting when I was working at Viacom, and they were like, I don't know, the Netflixes and co there. And back then, Netflix didn't have ads. I know, all know they have. And it took them also a long time to develop. And then, but back then, someone from I think there was the Viacom folks saying, yeah, ads are all the complexity. And then the Netflix says, how hard can it be, right, to add an ad there? And actually, adding ads to your app, like video ads, adds a lot of complexity. It's code-wise, it's testing-wise. Like testing ads is very hard. So this definitely is something that people underestimate. I mean, we all hate ads as a user. We all hate them as a developer, I can tell you.
No one's enjoying that journey there.
I remember like one colleague, she's not there anymore, but she always said, I tell everybody I work SoundCloud, but I never tell them which team I'm on, because everybody hates ads.
I'm on the ads team.
But they're doing an incredible job. But it's something that's very hard to develop, very hard to test, because there's also a lot of things that are out of your own control, which again makes testing very hard because out of your control. So
yeah, it's not just, I guess, getting people to want to advertise. It's the actual work behind making it so you can, as Netflix did, how hard can it be? It turns out it is harder than people think it is to set
And when
up.
we talk about automation, this is like similar. As I said, actually you have to watch a lot of streams. So how do we automate testing a video or music stream? Yeah, because actually you have to watch, which is very hard to automate thing. That the right video is playing. I mean, this is where I'm kind of hoping what I'm seeing already. AI will help. AI can tell, oh yeah, this is a video about cats. You can put this, okay, I'm clicking there, and then it should play a cat video, right? And then in the end, it doesn't maybe matter which YouTube video it was, as long as it's the cat category. Yeah. So hopefully we have a new tool in the toolbox.
That way it works. So also, I'll summarize a bit of sort of the testing there. One of your quotes from one of your DroidCon talks was code without tests is bad code. So to sort of neatly package all the testing stuff up, I thought we'd look at some sort of common misconceptions people have about testing across industries. I think the first one we can tackle is any change means fail test. What are your takeaways from that misconception? So
first, I definitely mean it that any code without tests is bad code. It's not my quote. I think it's Michael Feathers. There was this other one, I think it was Ken Peck, but Michael Feathers said also like every code without tests is immediately legacy code. So I like this definition. So I'm a big fan of testing. Also because I've seen applications being developed for a long time, throwing over the classic fence to QA department. They came back 3 months later, everything is actually broken. You have release cycles of years. This is not how it's supposed to work. This is why we like tests. Immediate feedback, shift left, as you said. So I believe in this. And when I started in the beginning looking, especially unit tests, I was this developer saying, if I change something, the test needs to be read because I changed something. But then I realized that this is actually wrong because it often, and a lot of code I've seen is like this. You changed something, but you didn't change the behavior. It still does the same thing. But all your tests either need to be changed or they're all just read because what you're actually testing where the behavior, how the system did it and not what. So you didn't actually, it was still doing the same thing. So the same input produces the same output, but I changed internally how the whole world, how it's producing this output. The test should actually not fail. If they do, then you have tests that are the ones that are very annoying. But a lot of people started hating testing. There was a TDD is dead on all of these movements, thinking, no, tests are bad. No, you've written the test in a bad way. And a lot of us, including myself, we're teaching also to write the test in the wrong way because we're focusing a lot on the wrong thing. But there's this, so test what the software is doing and not how it does it. And I have a good example there. So I was working with a colleague, and then he wanted to change the architecture of our app. And we were shortly before the release, and I said, it sounds like a really cool idea to moving to Redux, but maybe you do it after the release. And then I came on a Monday morning, and then there was a pull request open, changing the app to Redux. I said, yeah, don't worry, I did over the weekend. So, but the interesting part is that the test needed a bit of adjustment, but they're all still running because the system did still the same thing, although we completely changed the inner guts out of it. But the test showed that it still does its thing. So we could allow this change in the end. But if we would have the traditional tests, like, I don't know, 1 unit test per class or per function, they would be all useless. We would have started from scratch rewriting them. So I learned how to write my tests differently.
And you mentioned just unit testing just then. So is there a misconception about unit testing and like the pyramid structure and how that works?
Yeah, there's a lot of people, and this is kind of the same topic, saying exactly what is a unit. It is testing as one function of this one class, and there's a test per class, and then you're doing exactly this thing. And there's this discussion going on, what is a unit? And the guy that wrote TDD by example, so that came up with TDD, actually, I think the word unit test he didn't mention a single time in his whole book. He talked about, like, I don't know, call them developer tests. I think focusing on the name unit test is a bit bad. When you talk about the pyramid, they are tests that are very fast. You have a lot of them, and they run very fast, very reliable, they're not flaky. You can tell them whatever you want, right? But don't focus on don't tie them to the behavior. Just because that's what you think the definition of unit test is. Back in the day, the unit actually meant, I think, a module when it all started, and we kind of forgotten it. It's unknown actually when it changes to the conception that now everybody thinks it is. But yeah, it's one of these things where you put ourselves like in a dead end, but we keep discussing and running against this wall. No, but it's not a unit test.
Oh, unit test.
Well, I don't care.
We've mentioned it a few times as well, and we just covered it then in the unit testing. What a misconception people have about flaky tests, because that is something a lot of testers deal with.
Yeah, this is something that I think everybody is struggling with flaky tests, let's be honest. So these are tests that sometimes are red, sometimes are green. In the end, what happens? Oh yeah, let me just restart them. And the problem when you have this, and I think we've all seen this, you start mistrusting your test. Oh, see, I failed again. Let me just restart. And it's probably just a flaky test, but maybe there was actually a reason. There was actually something that glimmed up for a moment that actually customers on a scale will have, but you missed it because you think it's just a flaky test. And if you don't have trust in your test actually worthless. So when it came to Android, I was in the Android team for a long time at SoundCloud, and we had these UI tests. We started, I think, with Ubuntu, then Espresso, and we spent a lot of time trying to make them less flaky. And partially it worked. We're stubbing things out, making sure that no network requests actually happening. We follow the best practices when it comes to Espresso. Do not have like random wait here 2 seconds, but mostly it will working. But then at some point, and we spent a lot of time, there was a team doing all of this. When something was flaky, we write a ticket and then we looked at it, and it's all the best practices out there. And at some point, what we did, delete all of these tests.
Oh.
And it was, I think, the best thing we ever did. Because exactly as I said, like the energy you put into trying to make these tests work, and then ask yourself, when was the last time this test actually showed a bug? And you probably answer is never, or once in 10 years. But you spend hours and weeks trying to make this test run. Is that what we said earlier? Maybe don't automate this case, or trying to write it differently. Try to cover it more on a lower pyramid with unit tests, or just have someone on the release week, on the day of the release, just open that one tab or whatever it is.
It's much easier that way. To give our audience a little break from testing, your current role at SoundCloud means you have your hand on the pulse of the music streaming industry. Can you tell us how maybe testing works in that industry versus other industries? And is it similar to your work at Viacom? Just to put a spotlight on your current role, your current work.
So maybe let's start with the music industry itself. I think, music changed, right? When you think about back then, there was vinyls. There was a lot of money in music, right? Back in the day, I was working for Viacom. It was their own MTV, for example. It was after the big days, but I keep hearing these stories, like how great it was, what a big amount of money was there. It was the same as when I did BlackBerry. There was a lot of money in mobile back then.
Back in the day.
But it changed. I mean, they went to CDs, they went to MP3s, right, the whole piracy thing, and then to streaming. No one really owns music anymore. No. So the industry changed. For companies like us, there's very low margin because there's less money in the whole thing. It's low margins. Yeah. The artists need to get paid. So, for example, one thing that for a long time was thought it's impossible because computing power is the way you calculate the royalties. So there's this consumption, and this, for the big ones, it's correct that you need millions of streams to get like a few cents, right? And Spotify just not paying anyone, I think, more than 1,000 streams for a while now, which is very bad. So in the end, the money goes to the big artists. But companies like us, not only us, but did something we call as faint bad royalties, but there's different names out of there. So if you give me 10 euros and you listen to Billie Eilish, actually all this money should go to Billie Eilish and not to someone else, or even the small artist around the corner, right? Your friend or your neighbor. But computing this was for a long time thought impossible, and it's also something that changed now. It is actually now possible, and you can have a better payout there. So let's think about, so this is one thing, I think. And then people, the younger generation, they discover music also differently. I mean, they are on TikTok. Short form is a thing. That was the same as Viacom. Everybody's now short form. It means like short videos, right? It doesn't matter if it's on YouTube Shorts, if it's on TikTok. Let's hope the young generation discovers music. This changes also for all of us and for the developers at companies like SoundCloud or at Viacom. How you find them? I would say.
That's good. And you've already sort of answered a question I had lined up. And it was about how SoundCloud, you focus not just on the listeners, but you also focus on the artists and ensuring quality for both of them. You've already started on making sure the artists, and you can calculate how they get paid. And for the listeners, we've already mentioned it's about latency. Or is there anything specific, maybe between both of them, that they both really care about that is important to get right? So
one thing maybe, because you asked about testing. So in the end, when you have platforms like SoundCloud, you have user-generated content, and there's like other platforms. In the end, eBay, similar, right? Users upload. I think this changes also a bit how you do the testing. So you have a huge catalog, and it's constantly changing. A lot of these companies, they don't really have a proper staging because you can't copy like every morning your complete environment. So there's a lot of testing actually happening in production. You upload your track, you sell this water bottle, and I think when you come from a traditional QA perspective, that sounds wrong. Or you can't test the production. But I always said, like, but what are you afraid of? That this little client can break your backend? Then I think there's something wrong when you're afraid that by putting even a crappy ad online, that this will break something. Allow people to test in production. And in the end, this is what I said also earlier, you need to listen, but you also need to use the app. You need to go through the pain, uploading a track, posting an ad, to be on the other side.
To understand it.
And yeah.
That's good. No, that's also a really good ending point because we are starting to run out of time. But I know you're very proactive. You give a lot of talks and you're very active and you share comments and you're on social media. So where can our listeners and audience follow more about what you're talking about, maybe see where you're going to be speaking in the future? Is there any way you'd like to mention where they can follow your journey?
I mean, the easiest is probably Blue Sky. You can find me there. There's also traditional LinkedIn, became nowadays more like a social network. So yeah, one of the two is the easiest. Just follow me there and I announce the next talk.
So if you want to know more about Danny, his work and his ever continuing journey from Android to full stack and whatever comes in the future, you know where to start. But I will have to close off this episode. So I'd like to thank you, Danny, for joining us here today, sharing your insights. It's been great to learn about your tech journey and the knowledge you've gained from your now 25 plus years in experience. You need to update that LinkedIn. And as mentioned, if you want to follow more about his journey, he's on Blue Sky, he's on the LinkedIn, he'll update. And if you want to know more about making top-notch quality products, you can check out the TestDevLab knowledge base, where we have blogs, white papers, case studies, and of course, more episodes of Tech Effect. So thank you again, Danny. And thank you to our dear audience for joining us today, and I'll see you in the next episode.